Hey everybody, I'm Bobby. I'm here with Kylie and our man Josh Rags. We're the training crew with Hunt Lift Eat, and we're here to talk to you about some of the great stuff we got coming up because we've made I'd say some pretty big moves in the last couple months, and we're really steamrolling ahead here with a new training program, with new programs themselves, new coaches, and a lot of changes. So I feel like the easiest way to kind of discuss this is to just talk about it. So what do we got? Who wants to kick us off of what some of the new stuff that we have coming up? 'Cause I know there is a lot of stuff that's changing right now.
Yeah, we've definitely been revamping and editing the programs, bringing out some new content to connect with our audience a little bit different and to gear up for the hunting season that's coming in. So the organization, the categorization, and I guess purpose of the programs. The purpose doesn't change a whole lot, but
Right.
our strategic approach to it has significantly. So we are going to be launching the Apex Hunter, which is super exciting, Apex Center. And that's going to come out on July 22nd. What we've done is we've put a 12-week program, several of them, into a 12-month rolling program to try to address the different seasons and the different opportunities within those seasons to either build muscle or endurance. And so the first 12 weeks are going to be focused on endurance. Josh, do you want to? Josh did a lot of some of the brain power behind what's going into this first 12-week series. If you want to touch on what you
Yeah,
added.
absolutely. I think one of the things that I've noticed about myself and a lot of other people that I've worked out with and trained with is I really overestimate being a flatland dweller, really underestimate or overestimate my cardio. I feel good. I can run flatland, good distance, good times. I can carry my pack on relative rolling heels. And I just feel like, if you try to elevate that and mimic a mountain or you go out to the mountains and hike for a spring camping trip or something like that, it's very obvious that you're not in great shape. And so I think something that I've learned to focus on and that I've really helped people focus on going into hunts is you got to get your cardio ready. And so that's really what we're focusing on here is you got to get that endurance up, both your muscular endurance, your ability to move weight for a long period of time, carrying a pack is that, but then also to pair with that, like your cardiovascular endurance, being able to go a long time at a steady state without just dragging butt. And so that was the idea when we came to the programming. We are like, how do we do that? So there's some things that we sacrifice, knowing that everybody has a life and responsibilities, and not everybody's a professional trainer or bodybuilder. So we had to shrink workouts and things like that, but we come up with a really good program that I think is going to run really efficiently. And I mean that both day to day, but like how we get to the goals. We're not going to way overload any particular type of exercise or modality to where you get bored or wore out with the same thing. It's kind of it's really efficient, in and out.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's talk about that maybe for a second, of how the program ramps up. We talked about this pretty in depth based off of our existing programs, which you kind of start in with the ground, start running right away. It's very intense. It takes an hour and a half to 2 hours to complete some of the programs, which is great for the time, people who have the time to do it, and the base for their strength and for their cardio to start at that level. What we realized for a lot of our community members was, hey, we want to peel this back just a little bit. And like you said, people have lives. How can we make this manageable and purposeful for people who need to put it into a lifestyle that they can only get, an hour workout in each day? So it starts off pretty not simple, but easy to start and the build week over week. So we put in a base and we're putting in some tests to see where they're at and how to compare it afterwards. Um,
Mhm.
so those were things that we really tried to sort out on the front end to make sure that we were going after what people needed.
Yep. And the testing, and Kylie, I remember as we were talking about it, it was you can test a lot of things that, well, we want to test strength so that we think we have to do our bench press and our squat and our deadlift and our overhead press. And well, then we want to test for endurance, anaerobic endurance. So, well, then we need to do like a pull up max rep, or a timed exercise, timed burpees or something like that. And then, well, then we have to do our endurance. And it's like, nah, well, a lot of those things I feel like as I've trained people, and I think science kind of agrees with this, you kind of can train all of those systems to some degree or another at once. And as one progresses, the rest should. And so I think us focusing on endurance and pairing that up with endurance testing, but also with something a little more hunter specific is going to be really cool because I think like you said, you're gonna be able to figure out where you're at, be honest, like I was talking about, like how in shape are you really? And then as you go along, you should be able to tell that okay, things that we're doing are getting easier. And then when we test on the back end, I think it's really cool how we have the laddered testing, and maybe we can talk about that for a second. But I think that gives you the ability to like I don't know. There's a lot of goals in that. Maybe we should talk about that for a second. So I guess kind of I'll explain it, but it's your baby, so then you can kind of roll with it. But the idea is we're going to use a certain test, but there's three different levels to the testing, and you can kind of because the top one is pretty intense. The weights are high, the reps are high, the times are high. But you can pick one, and then you can either modify that and try to do that in a better time or four more reps or whatever the parameter is, or you can move up a level. And so it's really useful, I think, to use that. And I think we've got some pretty cool ideas that are unique from what we were doing before.
Yeah.
You know,
It seemed before we were just kind of like just doing it, just do it.
Right.
Now it's completely changed. You guys really have taken this program to the next level, and I don't know how many of our listeners actually have done the Wodify with us and our demo programs, but basically we did that to listen to everyone's concerns and everyone that had like something to say about a program, and we I think we tweaked everything to finally fit into every single person's routine now, which is really cool.
and like we said, the other programs are still all available, but this that we're going to be running through Train Heroics. So we're not doing Wodify anymore. That's one thing that we
Woo!
changed. We're going through Train Heroic, which has the features, the customizations, and the way that we want to offer the program out was more suited for that connection. And then as far as the testing, so week one of every 12-week cycle is going to have a test, most likely on day one, but that's to our discretion. And with that test, like Josh was saying, there's 4 levels. And if you think, hey, I'm just going to test out at level 1 and see where it is, and then test out at level 1 again in the middle or at the end, your goal would be to improve your time, improve your strength number, improve some part of how that test or diagnostic is measured. Or the other option is you test in at level 1 and you're like, hey, all right, I didn't do too bad, but maybe at the end you're testing in and qualifying at level 2 because also like Josh mentioned, it might be an increase of using a 35-pound dumbbell versus a 25 and you still get it within the time cap that was allotted. Or maybe the number of reps that your rep schemes, if you need to get 90 to 100 reps executed within a certain amount of time, you just fell short on your test, maybe even at level 1, and you're like, hey, by the time I get to the third block of the 12 weeks, I'm going to be able to get within the rep range. So you have a lot of options to assess your improvement. And that's what we want to see. We want to see people improve. It is not about just banging up your body or can I just hit a 5-mile walk with so many pounds on my back. There's so many other measurements that indicate success or your ability to go on a certain hunt or just overall health improvement that we want to see everybody get. So
Absolutely. I think a lot of the testing that people do naturally is it's not antiquated. It's helpful. If you go to any college football team, basketball team, baseball team, softball team, it doesn't matter. They're going to test 1 or 3 rep maxes on certain lifts. That's not a bad way to do it. The problem with that is a lot of people, most people don't know how to do a 1 rep max by themselves. So that's a little difficult for a lot of people. It's also hard to prep for that. And if you're not trying to get, you want to see? Say hey, can you wave? Hi. you, you can sit for a minute, no big deal. Um, So if you're not able to do that, things happen in your training. There's a million things that could go on. There's even the potential, and I was talking with my strength coach from college. You could train just like you're supposed to. You could hit all of the reps that and the sets that are prescribed at the percentages during the workout, and then just have a bad lifting day, the day you max. And
Mm.
if that's all you're basing is on lifting or your mile run or a sprint time or whatever, if it's just that one parameter that you've been testing for the whole time and it's not, um, how do I say this, like an ideal of improvement, like the kind of athlete or person, if you will, that you want to be afterwards, there's a lot of likelihood. We know how much is between our ears. You only hit the same thing that you've been lifting to get your squat up, and yet you only get 5 pounds, or you get no gain on your 1 rep squat max. That's debilitating as far as mentality and confidence and things like that. Plus, that's the only thing that you're measuring for change. There's nothing else. And you've done other things in that training block. So I think what we're doing is making people more aware of where they're at holistically, and they're able to tell how, even though it might be unexpected or it might not be the main training focus, they have progressed to some degree or another. And I think that's a really cool opportunity. I think it makes what we're doing a lot better.
Yeah,
Sorry, are y'all hearing the ding from my computer?
I don't think so, no.
Yes. Okay. Awesome. Go to bed, buddy. Love you.
Um, so I think we should talk a little bit about some of those measurements and what's included in this first block for endurance. So there's going to be 3 conditioning days and 2 strength days in the first 12-week series. Now, what's included in those strength days, when am I going to see my squat? Some people prefer to bench, some people, I think we've got a great mixture of all of those items in there, and then appropriate accessories, which one maximize time, but then also support that strength that's being tacked on. Now, like I said, conditioning is 3 days because this is targeted to be an endurance program, but we can support your strength. Or for those of you that don't have a lot of strength built to begin with, it's a good start. It's a good introduction. That way, when we move into our next program, which would be most likely strength, dominant versus conditioning, it's giving them a platform to start off instead of 0. So there's no reason that you can't be part of every program and still get a benefit. And why don't you talk a little bit about the accessories and how we've organized that within the program?
Yeah, absolutely. So after on the 2 lifting days, you'll have a primary lift, and just because that question may come up eventually, you're gonna have a primary lift, and that primary lift is gonna switch in the second 4-week cycle, and then you're gonna come back to it in the last 4-week cycle. In between there, though, the off muscles, if you will, or the off muscle groups or movement patterns are being trained. And if you are just I'll say this, if you're just a traditional regular hit the gym, 4 sets of 8, 5 sets of 5, 10 sets of 10, you do some supersets at the end. If you just lift like that, despite this being an endurance program, you will gain strength and muscle mass because of the way that it's designed. We've packed supersets that are co-balanced. So it's not like I'm doing a bicep curl and then I'm doing a tricep extension, because that's your arm, but it might be doing something like this is not real, but it might be doing something like a non-bicep involved row, of some sort, with a bicep curl. So you're still in that same movement pattern, but you're not using the same muscle groups on top of each other. So you're kind of maximizing your supersets. And then we're doing some complexes, and those complexes are meant to be kind of like a metabolic circuit, meant to keep your heart rate higher than normal. And it's meant to tax an entire muscle system, an entire movement pattern at once, but in low bursts. And so one of them that I really like, it's one that I've been very fond of for upper body strength, but it's called the gorilla complex. And the idea is that you would do the max amount of push-ups that you can do. And for those of you that can't do push-ups, you can do these assisted. The idea is that you would have to, we're looking for a good 10 reps somewhere after 10. And then you drop down to the floor and you do as many push-ups as you can, unassisted. 45 seconds, you jump straight back on the pull-up bar. You're doing 50% of the number that you hit that day. Then you're doing the same thing with push-ups 50%. Do another set like that at 50%, and then you drop that number to a quarter of the original. So you're doing a ton of pull-ups and push-ups more than you would regularly do in, like, let's say I want to do so many sets of 25, but you're also doing it in a pattern with the pull-ups and the push-ups together. That's really working that whole upper chassis area, working the shoulder stability, shoulder mobility, upper body strength, pull strength, push strength, all of those things. And when you get tired, because you'll get a pump and you'll start having to jump to get those pull-ups. You'll have to start cheating, and that's even going to work your upper body plyometrics and explosiveness. It's going to challenge your grip. So we're looking at really packing in a lot of detail into some very specific exercises that are very high volume. And that's going to get us in and out of the gym faster, and it's going to make us only have to lift 2 days a week to maintain what we've got. And then, in my opinion, I think a lot of people are going to build on what they already have.
So, um, Bicep Bobby, how are you going to be doing and executing?
Oh yeah, with you mean with my arm or with the back end of everything?
Oh, well, even when you get back into commission with your one arm, um, what do you
It's
think,
gonna
Bobby? I know that you do a lot of traditional lifting in the gym, and you'd also do conditioning. So, um, in comparison to what you've typically experienced, how does this organization vet out for you?
to be honest with you, I am super excited for this program. Probably for the first time in a long time, I'm excited to actually get gung ho on a program and really try the best that I can, especially coming out of, I mean, for anyone that doesn't know, I just recently last month got bicep surgery, tore all my tendons and ligaments in my right arm. And it's been a disastrous road to recovery, I'll say at the least. And I
Mm,
start PT Monday, and I'm really looking forward to once getting out of PT, getting back into the gym, getting back into, a groove. And, I think overstrain is going to be the thing that I really need to think about, that I can't really push myself as I used to. And I think that's going to be one of the hardest parts for me right now is saying, hey, I used to be able to do this pre-injury, but now I really can't do that for a little while, and I need to build up my strength. And I think this program is really going to, with the different ladders and levels, I think this is really going to help me actually get to my recovery and to my goals and everything that I need to.
Yeah, and I can say in comparison, I mean, I've done a lot of sports, and one of my primary modes of exercise has been Olympic lifting for such a long time. But prior to that, playing rugby and doing Muay Thai kickboxing, I've often had people ask me how much I bench and bicep curl, and I will tell you that I don't. I don't. One,
uh,
I don't particularly enjoy it, but two, I have so many other, back to what Josh is saying about incorporating your whole upper body into a multi plane and modal exercises that are paired together well, especially with volume, is that I've
mhm,
grown biceps by pulling an Olympic lifting bar off the ground and having to rotate it, by doing pull-ups and push-ups, by doing things that require the muscles to work together and have that muscle growth naturally, and not by just bro seshing it out. And that's what I appreciate so much about our programs is we do have bro splits. We do have programs that have that built into it, and it's very specifically laid out. And some people truly enjoy it, and that's okay. But for people who don't want to sit down and go through back day, um, leg day, and the typical bro split of how that is, these programs really cater to still hitting it and almost masking it in a way, in my opinion, that's more enjoyable.
yeah.
Yeah. Everybody's done the same thing
I,
for years. It's time to change it
mhm,
up.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and also it's not a CrossFit workout either, which that's always the alternative. If you're not doing the body part split or the push pull split or something like that, you're then it's well, you're gonna do an Olympic lift and then you're gonna just do high volume crazy circuits, and it's not that either. I think when everybody sees it, they'll agree with us that it's thought out well, it's designed well, and it's efficient. And I think that's what matters, because if we're talking with hunters and not just the general public, you want to be efficient in everything you do, because if you're in the mountains hunting, everything you do that's inefficient is wasted energy, and that's wasted focus. And I mean that you might not kill, and that's what we're there to do. That's the reason why we train, is so that we can be optimal in the moment of when we have that opportunity.
And be able to put ourselves in the position to have that opportunity. Because if you can't make it to the top of the mountain where you're going to find your trophy or your target, anything that you've been going after, or even
Hmm.
just see from peak to peak um, in another state, maybe that you haven't been challenged to hunt with a guide, can't keep up with your guide when you're going on a guided hunt. Those are all very
Yeah,
important aspects. If you, especially if you're doing paid hunts, you don't want to fail on your hunt. That you've invested that kind of money into by not being able to get up the mountain or get your
Could you
harvest out.
imagine that? Just
no,
think about
listen,
that.
I have a story. Listen. I have a story. I just talked with some guys. So we shoot on the third Wednesday of every month, fourth Wednesday of every month. The organization that I'm a part of, the BHA, we go shoot with this local archery club. And these guys were telling me we're talking about elk hunting out in Colorado, and they said these guys last year, because one of the guys that I was talking with had lost a lot of weight, and I was like, "Hey man, what are you doing? You look good." He's like, "Oh man, I had to cut some pounds off. I felt really bad last year." We chatting it up, and he's like, "Well, let me tell you something." And I was like, "What's that?" He said that they had walked into a wilderness area, and some guys came in on pack horses right behind them. Like they had probably been hiking an hour, and these guys come up, boom, and they were with an outfitter. And he said they hunted one day, and they bumped back into these guys at a trailhead, like farther back in the mountain where a trail splits, and they were headed down. And these guys looked miserable, and they had all their gear packed up. They were not moving place to place. They were with their outfitter again, and they stopped to talk with them. And these guys, being out east, they were like, "Man, we just can't handle it up here. Like, no, it's just too tough, and so we're just gonna go home." And so after one day with their guide on the mountain, pack horsing in, they said, "Nah, we're good." So if I mean a mountain can do that to you, you just waste thousands and thousands of dollars in a whole vacation just because you're not in shape. And it's like,
Yeah.
oh no. Uh,
Imagine
I
coming
can
back to tell
imagine.
that story.
So last
imagine, yeah, telling your wife, "Hey, babe, I know we spent like $3,000 or $4,000 getting me ready, and then we paid the outfitter like 5 grand, but I'm coming home tomorrow."
Glad you saved the $2,000 for divorce papers because he's gonna need it.
Oh, mm,
my
goodness.
my husband and I have a conversation a lot because he works, construction and works outdoor, and he's moving all the time. He's doing all the mountain man stuff, and I have more of a sedentary job. So I put more effort into actually training. My earring just fell out for no apparent reason. Um, so when last year when we went on our sheep hunt in Montana, and he still outstrides me because his stride is probably 3 foot longer than mine is. But going in, we hiked back like 25 miles and then had to hike 25, and we camped, we set up camp along the way, on extreme elevations. And we knew that if we came upon something, we were going to have to be able to pack it out in a certain amount of time because you have to report your harvest within 48 hours. So depending on how
Mm,
far back you're in, what to do. We know we can't pack out. I probably had 50 to 60 pounds on, at least when I started going in. And then, as you eat and whatnot, we're going to have to drop our gear, just pack out the animal, get out in half the time if we can, and then come back in and get our stuff. That decisions that you have to make based off of your conditioning and your abilities and how far back in the country you are. Um,
mm-hmm,
and the other thing I think you and Jess and I were talking about the other day, my experience with our moose hunt, however many, so it was like 4 years ago, that we had very specific rules of no more than a mile. And he shot his 2 miles away from the airstrip. And we didn't have, the Alaskans were like, no one here does that on foot. They were like, we all have pack horses or got UTVs bringing out our animals, and you guys packed out 2 moose on a do-it-yourself hunt in the middle of nowhere, backpacked them in. I was like, that is accurate. Um, but I
yeah,
wouldn't have been able to do that if I wasn't going through programs or paying attention to. We very, intentionally made sure that we knew how much weight we could handle, and
mm-hmm,
that relates. Josh, you said that you and your wife so in the program we have suggestions for weights
Hmm.
is where I'm going to lead into for this.
Yeah.
Suggestions for male versus female, that they shouldn't be the same.
Mm-mm.
They can be the same. There are anomalies all over the place. This is not to say that a woman can't pack out 75 pounds worth of moose or a whole quarter, of
Hmm.
depending on where it is that what the regulations are where you're harvesting. But it's to say, where are you? What can you do? What are you trying to achieve? And then if you get to a point where you can't elevate, what else do you need to work on? Because it's not just rucking or packing.
Right.
So just maybe touch on your concept of how people should be training for those types of things and how that works into the
Sure.
program.
Sure. And I think we'll speak for Jess a little bit here. If you haven't ever rucked and you're brand new to this and you're just like out of the box, like I want to get ready for a hunt. I'm not going this year. You're way on the ball or anything like that. Or for whatever reason, you just never put a backpack on with the weight on it. We're going to suggest starting with a weighted vest to mimic that and then kind of lead into it. But the idea would be, I mean, let's just think about it this way, just in general. Let's just take the body mass of a woman. Let's say she is capable of carrying the same size elk quarter out as a man that's more like 100 pounds heavier than her. If she falls and she lands on something with that thing on top of her, it's a lot more of her body mass on top. So it's safer to not have a woman 5'3", 5'6", with a 3.5 foot elk quarter hanging off of her back. So the way me and my wife have worked it out is she trains about a half or a little more than my weight. So I typically do a trail weight of 45 to 50 pounds. Sandbags lose weight and they get heavy when they get wet, whatever. So it's like 45 or 50 pounds is what I suggest for males for their trail weight. And that's to mimic tent, food, water, etc. I think if you're packing well and you've done this, you should be able to get in for a week, depending on the situation, between 40 and 50 pounds. And that's just what you're going to carry on your back. And then for ladies, I think it's appropriate. And Kimberly trains 25 to 30 pounds. And so she's a little bit closer there because if we're together, she's sleeping in my tent. She has her sleeping bag, stove, the little things that we don't both have to have. So it cuts her weight down a little bit. And then when we think about packing out, I've kind of got a strategy of how to debone meat and put stuff on her back. And we would expect her to carry 60 to 65 pounds. And then I'm carrying 85 to 100. And I typically train on carry out weight or pack out weight at 100 pounds because I think the last elk quarter I pulled out with bone in was 96 and I hadn't trained that heavy and I didn't like that. So I'd say guys go up to 100 and work on there. Again, though, like you said, Kylie, if you throw 100 pounds well, first of all, let me say this. When you throw 100 pounds in your pack and stand up with it, it's gonna change your perspective. You're gonna feel it in your feet, you're gonna feel it in your knees, you're gonna feel it in your hips, for sure. Start walking, and if you feel like you're just gonna, woo, because that's what's gonna happen if you're not prepared for it. You're gonna feel like you're gonna tump over. The little bit of balance that you're losing as it shifts, you're gonna feel like it's gonna carry you off the trail. If it feels like that, I mean significantly, and you start to wobble, stop, lower the weight. But if it just feels like you're having to control yourself and keep it in between, like we say down south, between the mustard and the mayonnaise, the street signs or lines. If you're able to do that, but you're just wobbly, keep that. Sorry, that's funny, ain't it?
No, I
I
love
knew that
it.
would.
I've
I
never
knew that
heard that
would get you
before.
too. I knew that it would get you too. I love it. But yes, so if you just feel wobbly, and you're not stepping over yourself, keep with that 100. It'll be worth it. I was listening to a gentleman. He's an exercise physiologist. I was nerding out on some of the stuff he was talking about, and he was saying, if you think about fitness, please give me and him the illustration. If you think about fitness like a guitar string, there's two ways to make a guitar string make a sound, and then there's a way to manipulate the sound. You can pull the string up, right? Or you can push the string down, right? As you're playing it with your fingers, you can bend it. Well, when we think about our muscular strength, we want to pull up. So we want to train above our lifting potential at a sub-maximal percentage. And I'll explain that here in just a second. But with aerobic exercise, with aerobic endurance, we're trying to increase our aerobic capacity. The only way to do it is to push from the bottom. So to train at a sub-optimal level, a sub-maximal level for a above maximal time. So let me explain those two concepts. If you are trying to make your
Oh,
bench press head, oh, if you're trying to make your bench press better, if you look at a traditional percentage chart, if you want to do 80%, it's going to tell you to do 8 reps. The idea there is you're only able to do one set of 8 with 80% one time. It basically be your 8 rep max. But when you look at a exercise program, traditionally, you're going to see 4 to 6 sets of 8 programmed. And the rest time between those sets is going to be what's supposed to allow that energy system that you're using most of the way to reload so that you can do that again. And so what you do is over time you go, first 2 weeks is 4 sets of 8, next is 6, then it's boom, and you're keeping that same percentage or even going up in percentages some. What you're doing is you're pulling from above. When we're talking about what we're doing with our endurance here is we want to push from below. So we want to do a lot of exercises that we can repeat because they're below our maximum ability, our maximum output, but we want to do them for an extended period of time over and over and kind of build on top of those things. And that's what we're really attempting to do with the program here is to accomplish that. And yeah, I'll just leave it there. That would be that. So, excuse me. I'll go back to the rucking. I forgot that's where we started. The idea with the rucking is that it is a strength and endurance exercise. So you both have to pull from above by adding more weight than you're going to pack out typically. But then you also have to go way below what you're typically going to use or right at what you're typically going to use and just go for way longer than you typically would. There we go. I loop that back around.
Circle back.
Circle back.
so essentially, you want to ruck with 25 pounds for 10 miles and maybe 100 pounds for 5 miles.
Essentially. Or like what I do is right now in the middle of the training
Just
that
to
I'm in,
simplify.
yeah, something like that. You would do like 100 pounds for a mile, but then you might do, on your lower days, if you're just rucking and no running, you might do 25 pounds or 30 pounds, 5 miles, 3 times that week, you know? And I think people that have done a traditional, marathon training or something like that, they know how that goes. You know, you're running at, and even in our last in Magni, you're running at 60% of your 1 rep or your 1 mile time for 3 miles. And then you're doing another 2 miles at 80%, right? It's all way below what you can actually run miles in, but it's making you get better at it. It's creating an adaptation.
Hey, Bobby, are you taking up running now that you can't bicep curl?
Yeah, well, that will be. Ironically, I tried to run the other day, and if any of my neighbors recorded this, it was hysterical. So my arm is like locked in a position. So I don't know if you've ever ran without swinging your arms, but you look absolutely ridiculous. So seeing a guy run with this brace on without swinging his arms, I'm sure was a sight to see. But yeah,
Oh my.
I will be
Can
once
you
this thing
tape your
comes
other
off.
arm down and just call it like T-Rex?
It's like you're wiggling back and forth, like you're just shaking. Like it's so ridiculous. Challenge you.
Can
Go
you,
ahead, go run
yeah,
without swinging your arms now.
you gotta go, if you video it and send it in the group chat, I will do it and send it back in the group chat. I promise.
Yeah,
We can use it as social media fodder.
we'll make it a verb or an adjective or whatever. We'll just describe our running style now. Just do the Bobby.
Yeah.
So,
Do the
what would
Oh
Bobby.
you
goodness.
say? What would you guys
Um,
say is the average time that's going to be completed now per workout program? Would you say 30 minutes, 45 minutes, a little over an hour?
I would say getting used to it the first 2 weeks is probably going to take you an hour. Once you figure out what's expected and if this is a big if you pay attention to the rest intervals and hold to them. Don't talk to your gym buddy. If it says 45 seconds, get your butt back to doing what you're supposed to do. It will get done in 45 minutes.
Yeah,
Hmm.
that's what I
so
was
that's a
figuring too.
great point. 2 great points, in my opinion. One is an expectation for a program if you haven't gone through someone's program. So when you have trainers and programmers, they typically have a format, and we can explain to you that format until we're blue in the face. But until you've gone through the first week, and Train Heroic has a great chat feature for us that we are going to be, you can lean on the coaching team. So the coaching team is me and Josh and Bobby and Jess. Now, Jess isn't on today, but Jess has created a low modified version of this program for those who might feel like they need to just start a step down. And it doesn't strip anything away from it. All it does is keep you from maybe creating too much soreness early on and not enjoying the program, or bringing down the running just a smidge.
Mhm.
And all of that is still modifiable within hers. And that's what the coaches are there for within the chat features and being connected. So when you're getting used to a program, it will always take longer in that first week, sometimes two, depending on how well you catch on. And the other great point to that is, are you dicking around during your workouts? Like, don't come to me and say your program is too long when you've been scrolling your Instagram reels and you've been, not managing your time within your workout. So that is one thing that I will not, even when I coach in-person classes, not that I don't want you to have, great relationships with your partners or encourage the person that's next to you, but we need to move. This is how much you're paying for this time, maximize it. That's how I feel. Other people might be a little bit more relaxed, but you're getting more out of your workout. It's, again, you being efficient.
Mhm.
If you're like, hey, I want this to be an hour and a half workout, you're not going to get as much out of it, because those rests and those pairings and that movement, the intended heart rates, things like that, are intentionally placed in there. So to move away from it, and pet your dog or take selfies, and
Yeah.
it's not in your benefit.
Yeah. In the warm ups, that's another thing I think people need to understand. The warm ups in this they're quick. I had a gentleman. I was lucky enough to have the time I played college football, and the guy that graduated when I was a freshman, so he was a senior. I got to play ball with him for a year, and then he went and played in the NFL for several years. And he came back, and I was asking him, like, what's the biggest difference in how y'all train in the NFL? And he's like, one, we don't train for 2 hours or hour and a half like we do, and everything's on a rest interval, and it's a clock. Nobody stops, nobody talks. It's just boom, 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 boom. And he was just so efficient. And he talked about the warm ups. He's like, man, we get in there and it's not like, oh, we're going to lean and shake it out and jump around. And then we're going to kind of slowly gradual. It's like we did mobility, and that made you get hot. And then we started doing plyometrics, and that got you what he called the drip. And once you got the drip, you're warmed up. Now it's time to run. And he said it all happens in 12, 15 minutes in your their conditioning, and then you're right in the weight room and you're doing really intense lifting on the clock with a horn, boom, 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 and you're done. And it's really cool. He's like, it's like a little army of ants, just super efficient. And I really caught on to that. I was like, okay, well, that's something that we need to implement for everybody, because some people like being in the gym. It is social, but I think it's better if you just get the work done. You can talk in the locker room or something.
So I know when I coach high schoolers, a high school girls wrestling team, I mean, if you think about, and the junior high kids come in too, um, they like to chat. They're social people. People are social beings to begin with, but how do you manage
Hmm.
that? So they get printouts, they have to record stuff, they have to be on top of their game. And I hate to say it this way, if you're not paying attention, anything becomes unsafe, or you're not there with purpose because I have a limited amount of time to do my job, you got to go.
Yeah,
You got to
you're
go.
out.
And that's not
Straight
because
up.
it's a bit, you're not being a team player. And if you're not putting the work in here, you're not going to put the work in on the mat. That's just, for me, those things translate. And if you're not putting the work in this program, you're probably not putting the work in the woods. Um, unless your tree stand is 60 yards from your house, which is very feasible. But we want to make sure then once you kill your deer, you can get it out. It could be on your ATV trail. Okay, once again, now we just want to make sure that you're living long enough to eat the meat that you killed. So we have purpose here,
Yeah.
not
There's a
just
lot of
trying to get you
steps.
up Mount Everest.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's also some of that. One other thing we try to measure is your RPE. So let's dive a
Yes.
little bit into the RPE. So I haven't typically measured a lot in RP. So this is definitely Josh's scoreboard here, more so.
Mhm.
I've personally measured RPE, knowing that I can hit a certain weight or do a certain thing. You talked earlier about things being mentally defeating, right? Knowing
Mhm.
that, hey, I can run that in a 7.5 minute mile instead of an 8. Today was one of those. It's based off of my RP. This isn't because I'm a bad athlete. This is because I've had a bad day. And
Right.
how do we judge that? And how does that groom our mentality and our approach throughout the balance of the program? So why don't you go ahead and give us your RPE spiel?
Sure. So quickly, RPE is rate of perceived exertion. That's a really nerdy way to say how hard did it feel like you went at that given exercise or that given session. If you joined us for any of the hero WODs, at the end of the workout, it asked you, how hard was that? Basically, that was that simple of a question. And it gave you a 1 to 10, and it was like on a gas meter, That was an RPE. That's a simple way to measure the RPE. The idea is though to using it as a scale of measurement or quantification is instead of having loading periods and deloading periods and gain periods, actualization phases, and things like that. What you can actually do is just simplify the workout, which is what we're trying to do. That's what we've been talking about on the front end. We want to make this simpler, but still useful and efficient. What you can do is say, okay, Coach Rags has said we're going to do 3 sets of 6 overhead press. How am I supposed to progress that week to week? Well, add weight. It's that simple. Well, how do I know what if I can't add weight? What if I add a 2.5 the week 3 and then add a 5 week 4 and then I got to add a 5 and a 2.5 week 5. And what if I can't do that? Okay, well, stay where you're at and watch how easy it gets. You'll notice that you can stay the same weight. So now you've gotten to a wall. Now we start and every set we do is at that last heavy weight that you figured out you can't do. You can't go any more than. And then you watch how difficult each set and that given block of exercise, that overhead press, is week to week. And you'll go from it being a 10, like, man, I'm barely getting all 4 sets and all the reps, to, okay, the first 3 sets are really easy. I only struggled on the last one. Well, maybe you can go up and wait. Or maybe next week you really go after it and try to make sure you get all those reps and sets and then move on and gain and add some more weight. It's more an intuitive way. And like you were saying, Kylie, if you know, like this week, I worked in the heat a bunch. I traveled for work. I then had a very long evening. I had a friend come in town kind of late and unexpected, had some things going on. I talked with him for a long time. He stayed the night. We hung out the next day. So basically, I burnt my candle on both ends and I was really worn out. I worked out this morning and I really wanted to get after it because I might not be able to work out as much as I'd like to this week. So traveling for work again. And I just had to be honest with myself, like, where am I at? So and I kind of knew what I could hit. And I made sure that I got a 10 RPE, like I could not have given any more, but I was able to gauge the weights based on having done this program that I'm on right now for the last 9 weeks. I kind of knew what I've been doing and getting really good workouts. And I knew that if I went in there and gassed it, I was going to fail on getting better, like progressing in weight. I probably wasn't going to get that great of a workout because I was going to cheat on my rest intervals and I was going to cut some sets short, or I wasn't going to focus on, pushing through my glutes and my RDLs and things like that. I wasn't going to get a good workout. And so what I did is I managed the weight expectations so that I could get a 10 out of my workout. So now I know that I squatted, deadlifted, stepped up, and did and trained calves at the maximum that I had for that day. Now, y'all aren't going to be able to do that if you just start trafficking the RP, but that's the goal. That you are your own gauge. And no, it's always good to have a partner that can be like, man, you're not trying. But as we progress in maturity, especially as lifters, we're able to say, okay, I know where I'm at. I know what I can do. I'm going to get after this. And I know how that feels like. And so it's an intuitive way of gauging where you're at. It's also a way, I said, to quantify things. It's also a way to say, okay, I've been doing this same weight because that's the weight that was prescribed by a coach, or I've been doing the same percentage in this block, but it started out, it was an 8 and now it's a 5. Well, you don't have to do a test. You don't have to take a day off in the middle of the next week to go test your bench and your 40 and and your whatever, because you know that you've gotten better. And so you can, like that.
Yep.
And you can talk with the coaches and say, hey, this is getting easy. What can I do? And we can tell you how to get better.
No, that's great. And for people who are just jumping into a program, even though you don't have a big baseline to compare that with to start to say, oh, I must have gassed at this time. Well, you're creating it. So, right, you're your own experiment in that sense. And what we as coaches have agreed that we want to teach you guys is to be able to coach yourselves in that sense. We don't want to be a crutch, forever want to teach you about going program.
Right.
It's a great measure that we're putting in here.
Yeah, absolutely. And then there will be ways to, there's ways to say in the workout, once everybody's kind of bought into the RPE idea, we're able to say, do this at a given RPE. And we can use the same workout and we can kind of scale back to that load, deload, actualization phase kind of thing in traditional linear programming. We can actually do that, but do it with RPE. So we don't have to tell you a weight. We can tell you an exertion and program things that way.
Yep.
Yeah.
I will say this, if you're listening to this and you're a little confused of what any of this means, and you're a little just taken back by it, there's a reason why we have so many coaches put in place on these programs, so that we're here to help you and we're here to answer all your questions. So don't be alarmed, and don't be put off by the program and thinking it's too complicated. It's very simple to understand, and that's why we're all here to kind of coach and guide everybody into the up, and we're all going to be doing it together. So.
Well, we're going to put a couple of pre-program and post-program elements together for that. I know for the HLE team members, if you're a team member, one, it's cheaper for you, right? Already.
Yeah.
Second, we are doing an onboarding call next Thursday. I think they said it for 7 p.m. I have to double check, but there's a Calendly. I always want to say Calendly link that is issued out for you to sign up and jump on for 30 minutes with. And if it goes a little bit longer, that's fine too, with all the coaches to get to know us a little bit better and to ask questions about what you're stepping into. There's also going to be some instructions throughout Train Heroic. It gives us opportunity to add notes or instructions through the coaches stuff. So we're going to go in there and plop some things in where we think it might be helpful. People are going to be reviewing and accessible to the chat. Now, most of us, have busy lives ourselves. And while this is a priority, one person is going to try to respond immediately. We all are active in it. But also be patient there because we're getting used to those modalities. And I do have to find out if we're going to push those onboarding calls out to the public. I have to see if that's a goal or not. And then at the end, when we're bringing in a new cycle, so if you don't join us in the first 4 weeks, you have an opportunity in 4 more weeks. We're going to open up enrollment again and start a new team. And we will be doing a onboarding and review call for the next block for those who are already in it. You guys will be in there together. You can get feedback from active members that are participating in the program. And then, we'll move into either your first week or their 5th week. So we have a couple of good ways to keep the community rolling and backing each other information. And as far as RPE and the understanding of the logic behind that, we are able to put links within the programs and Train Heroic well. And if you pay attention, sometimes Train Heroic, if you're not familiar with it, like anything else, takes a couple minutes to look through and get used to the format. The links in there, you can just click on it. It'll take you to an explanation sheet. They won't let us put PDFs, which I would have loved or PowerPoints, right, Bobby? I would have put
PowerPoints. Absolutely. 20-page slide.
Yeah, you would have a PowerPoint. The frequently asked questions, and then the PowerPoint would be the answer, and it'd be one slide say no.
Yeah, no. So yeah, those are just key points. And with that, we are all HLE team members. Obviously, I mean we're working for HLE. So if there's questions for anyone from the public about the HLE program and the process, we always have people available to get you guys more information there as well.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. And I will say it's a huge added benefit to be a team member with the cost difference between public and team members. So if you're on the verge of wanting to join the team, or not, if you're seeing a little bit more value on the training side, this is going to be a huge value added for team members for sure.
Yeah. Yes.
Well, I think one last thing I wanted to maybe at least mention on here, but we're going to have another podcast to bring Jess on and talk about the intentions behind how she thought out what we're calling the low modification version of the Apex Hunter Endurance first 12 weeks portion of this program. But also, we've talked a little bit on other podcasts and this about energy systems. And I know Josh and I have gone back and forth about this and the energy systems, which really broken down into, I'm going to say layman's or anybody's vocabulary is your strength, your aerobic, and then your anaerobic, and the blend in our approach to that. And I think some companies or programmers, programs will make claims about isolating a certain system or maybe their theory for approach. And in reality, the way that most of it is set up is you can't avoid bridging into all three. It's how long you can stay in one versus the other. And our intention of growing all three of those energy systems, which have very technical names that we're not going to necessarily throw out there, but I think it's good to close on the importance of developing all three energy systems and not just focusing on one, which is a flow, or I should say a periodization through our programs that you will see ebb and flow and push and pull against each other for what's priority. Even though you'll pass through all three, we are going to prioritize a certain energy system over another during a 12-week block for a reason. And this one was endurance. So Josh, I know you want to jump in here and talk about energy systems too. Yeah, what's your thought on that?
So, like you said, there's a very scientific and specific way to speak about this, and there's a very accessible way, and both of them are correct. I think a lot of people, like you said, say more than they need to, and by saying more than they need to, they actually make themselves incorrect because they don't want to get into the scientific nitty gritty, and they kind of mess that up. And I would have a master's degree in kinesiology, and I took a cardiovascular, what would they call the class? It was like a forum class. Basically, we just talked about articles and new research around the cardiovascular system while learning about it. And I was really impressed with the way Dr. Gagnon, the teacher, explained it. He said, listen, if you lift weights for strength hard, and correctly, you're going to keep your rest intervals appropriate, and the pumping mechanism of pushing the weight and dropping it, is going to elevate your heart rate to where you're going to do cardiovascular training. You're going to do aerobic training because you're going to lift for over an hour at a elevated heart rate that's within your aerobic training capacity. And he said, but you're not going to notice that. A bodybuilder is not going to be able to go out and jog with any level of efficiency, even though if we looked at his cardiovascular system, I might say it can't. So there's specificity that comes with exercise and modalities and things like that. But basically, like you're saying, if we lift weights like we lift here at Hunt Lift Eat, you're doing some type of anaerobic and aerobic exercise. And so I can break it down pretty quickly. You have anaerobic and aerobic. In the anaerobic, you have your anaerobic endurance or your anaerobic capacity, and then you have your strength. Those two things are both anaerobic exercises. And so an example of an anaerobic exercise would be like sprinting or jump roping or weightlifting to some degree. What they're going to do is they might elevate your heart rate to even a really high level, but it's not going to be elevated for any significant period of time. Now, I just said that if you lift for 45 minutes and you have elevated heart rate, you're doing that. But again, the change is not significant enough for you to feel it. So when we're training things like that, the idea is that we would have a quick burst of energy under 2 minutes, And so think about that. So imagine if you would like, you want to train cardio by doing bicep curls. I want you to pick up a weight and imagine doing double arm bicep curls for a straight hour. There's not many people that can do
Your
that.
bicep, Bobby. Is that how you tore your bicep?
Jeez,
Exactly. That's
touchy
exactly what he's
subject.
doing.
Yep.
Yeah. He's like, I'll do cardio while I'm working,
Cardio
dadgummit.
bicep, Bobby.
Yeah. Well, there's just no way that that's possible. So, and you would just get a super cardiovascular adaptation in your upper body. It wouldn't be systemic. And so when we think about these, what we're trying to do is become explosive. We're trying to have that mid-range endurance where maybe like a soccer player would, where they burst and then jog, 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 jog,
Mhm.
stop, burst, jog, 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 jog. A lot of that is anaerobic work, even though a soccer player is primarily an aerobic athlete. And that's because their games are so long and they're on the field for so long. So we're always going to lift. We're always going to be training the anaerobic capacity there. And we're doing that through absolute strength, which is like your 1 to 3 rep range. Then you have your hypertrophy, which includes 4 and 5, but let's not get messy here. We're going to say then you got your 6 to 12 or 15 rep range. That's going to cause an adaptation in the muscle cells for them to get bigger and longer. You're going to get swole. And then you have your endurance lifting, which is not an aerobic like jogging, but it is making for a long mechanism called strength endurance. And that's your 20 to 30 rep ranges. Or if you have like 100 reps, as few sets as possible. Or if you're doing 30 reps every minute on the minute, that would be an example of strength endurance. And that's all with jump roping and sprinting for your heart and your cardiovascular system. That's all covered under the umbrella of anaerobic activity.
Yep.
Then you have aerobic exercise, and that's swimming, biking, running, rucking, like Taibo classes, kickboxing classes, your group fitness classes and things like that. Shout out to Richard Simmons since he just passed,
Oh,
RIP.
Damn.
Those type of things are your aerobic exercises. And so those things are really specific though. And so what I will say is we are going to do our aerobic exercises in a way that mimics what we're doing out in the field. So we're going to ruck with weight on our back for long periods of time, right? So that long adaptation, we talk about pushing up from the bottom. So lower than what you're going to do most of the time for longer than you're going to need to. And we're going to run because rucking, while very beneficial and it's the primary modality, running helps with that a lot. And then you have your biking and your swimming. We won't do much of that at all, but we can include those things. And the idea there is that we're increasing our ability to maintain a low heart rate increase for a long period of time. It increases our working capacity on the low end. And that's what we're looking to do. And in this one specifically, we're really focusing in on that adaptation and the strength endurance adaptation that we need for backpack hunting because we're looking at going into the season. Now, on the back end, we can throw any of those things out there and run them in any kind of category or, pattern.
I think another great benefit of that is when you're doing your rucking or your aerobic portion of it, you are hopefully increasing your efficiency for recovery as well. That way, when you're working through your strength sets, your heart rate, when you're going through in your bursts, you're finding, better recovery because you're increasing oxidation, you're increasing all of those things that are important for your cardiovascular health and recovery. So
Correct.
they do support each other well, even though one might be the priority over the other in a certain specific program that we're putting.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
You lost Bobby on the Richard Simmons part. I didn't think you were going to recover.
I felt so bad. I can't even say it on air. I'll text you guys later. I don't want to get Luke canceled.
We just got told that we have no language restrictions, Bobby. It's that bad. I'm blushing and I don't even know what you're about to say, and I don't get embarrassed easy. Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, goodness.
R.I.P.
R.I.P.
Well, anyway, I think that's a lot of great information. I think we definitely touched a lot of points that people can really see that the biggest things are we're changing the programming. Obviously, the old program's still there for anybody that wants it. We're on Train Heroic, which is a much better platform to be able to use. Where we listen to everyone's complaints. questions, comments, concerns, and we adapted and made some, I think, some great changes with this full team here. Don't think that everyone here has been working really hard to get this all running and up. So it's really appreciative to the coaches that have been working their butts off to get this going. So we really hope to see a lot of people join in and really see the changes firsthand and utilize the coaches and ask the questions that you might have, or if you're trying to try it out and change up from what you're at, try to jump in, hit one of us up, and get into the programming for us. But I think that's all.
How do they sign up?
Oh, yeah. So I think what we're doing is we're going to have it on the website. So the main website, you'll have the link on there. And then if anyone's already into did Hero Week, or if they did our Magnite program or anything like that, like our Magnite team members can easily just transfer over their subscriptions and everything. There's going to be a bunch of different ways. We're going to have QR codes that you can scan on the Instagram. There's going to be links being brought out, but download Train Heroic, get yourself an account set up, and then we'll get you all squared away in the program.
All right. Well, thank you, everybody.
Yeah, I think that's it, and I hope to see everybody out there. Thanks, guys, for jumping on.
Yeah, absolutely.